Hello, ESG recipients. Welcome to Colorado's Division of Housing Emergency Solutions Grant Monitoring presentation. On today's agenda, we'll be providing a brief ESG overview. We will discuss the purpose of monitoring. We'll go over the monitoring selection process, share ways that you as a subrecipient can prepare for monitoring. We will discuss the review and post-monitoring process, and we also have some helpful tips and ESG monitoring tools that we will share at the end.
So hopefully many of you are familiar with what ESG is, but for a little bit of program background, HUD grants ESG funds to state and local communities to address homelessness within those communities. And the Colorado ESG program is administered by the Colorado Department of Local Affairs, or DOLA. So there's a number of eligible activities that fall under the Colorado ESG program, and these are street outreach, emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, homelessness prevention, and homeless management information systems, or better known as HMIS, or a comparable database for certain grantees. The target population of ESG grants are to support individuals and families who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of experiencing homelessness. Some partnerships that occur within this program are, and within this grant, are collaborations between government agencies, nonprofits, and community-based organizations. And these programs are required to be in compliance with HUD and state regulations and reporting requirements under both of those entities. So the way the funding flows, in order for us to get dollars to the agencies who are serving folks directly, HUD allocates ESG funding to recipients, which could be state or local communities. So in Colorado, HUD funds the Division of Housing, which is a branch underneath the Division of Local Affairs, better known as DOH. So we receive funding from HUD. And then through a competitive application process, we pass these funds on to subrecipients. And those subrecipients may be the agencies who are directly supporting folks experiencing or at risk of homelessness, or those agencies may serve as a fiscal agent who then pass these funds on to subrecipients. And they provide support to the sub-recipients who are working on the ground to serve and support folks experiencing homelessness. So what is monitoring? The purpose of monitoring is to ensure grantees of ESG grants are adhering to local, state, and federal laws and requirements. And through this, we evaluate program compliance, financial records, administrative structures and practices, and project performance. And ultimately, our goal is to provide feedback to address concerns or findings in order to strengthen program compliance.
ESG monitoring is a continuous process where DOH and the subrecipient maintain regular communication regarding the subrecipient's projects, activities, expenses, documentation, and other ESG-related efforts. The criteria used for monitoring selection includes the subrecipient's monitoring history, their financial management, whether or not you are a new subrecipient or have a newly funded project or activity, compliance issues that have been noted by your grant manager, and any organizational changes that have taken place. The monitoring selection process, part 2. A subrecipient's risk determines how often they will be monitored. Risk can be categorized as high or low. ESG grantees are monitored based on their perceived risk level. These risks include, but are not limited to, not having been monitored at least once during a 3-year period, evidence from payment requests that the agency is not obligating or spending funds in a timely manner, being a new grantee or performing a new ESG component, evidence based on complaints, visual inspection that grantee is not providing shelter or is not performing the funded activities in an consistent staff turnover, organizational restructuring, or other changes in the ESG program. If your agency has been placed on a corrective action plan, that would also trigger a monitoring. DOH will complete a risk analysis as part of the onboarding and also during the grant closeout process for each ESG grant agreement or grant cycle. Preparing for monitoring as a subrecipient. So your ESG grant manager will reach out to the responsible administrator and signatory authority at your agency via email to notify them of monitoring. In this email, the grant manager will include monitoring dates for you to select from, as well as any relevant exhibits that will be used in the monitoring process. Your agency should carefully review all the documents and reach out to your grant manager with any questions. During the review, your agency should have staff members available to contact if further information is needed. Please keep in mind that monitoring is a required collaborative process aimed at improvement and should not be seen as a punishment. This is really to help your agency ensure they're meeting all ESG requirements.
Okay, so what does this review process look like overall? Well, like it was stated before, it's a collaborative process, meaning that your agency and a DOLA ESG grant manager will be working together during the review. We each have tasks to complete in order to ensure a smooth monitoring experience, and we recommend that grantees share any questions, concerns, and comments related to DOLA ESG during this process. Your grant manager will be responsible for reviewing all of your documents, requesting additional information for clarity, and documenting your policies, procedures, and other information in accordance with HUD ESG requirements. Your agency will be responsible for supplying any requested documents or information, asking any questions you may have, and taking a key position in collaborating on any needed corrective action. Some common monitoring terms that we're going to go over in the next few slides are desk review, on-site review, recommendations, concerns, findings, and corrective action. So let's start with the types of reviews. We have 2 types of review that we complete. We have desk reviews and on-site reviews. In a desk review, you will be asked to send digital files to your grant manager. They will then review those files and complete a guided rubric for each of HUD's requirement categories. Grant managers may ask questions during this time to make sure that we're getting the clearest representation of your agency. In an on-site review, you will still send digital files to your grant manager for review like you would in a desk review. However, before completion of your monitoring, you and your grant manager will set up an in-person meeting at your site to complete a tour and meet you and any relevant staff to your program. Once your review is completed, whether it's a desk or an on-site review, your grant manager will create a final report that outlines areas of compliance, recommendations, concerns, and/or findings. If an agency is in full compliance with ESG requirements, your monitoring is complete when you receive the final report. If we noticed any areas where there could be improvement based on best practices and not requirements, we will share that information with you. These are recommendations for you to consider addressing. If there is something we noted that is technically in compliance but may cause non-compliance in the future, it will be listed as a concern. Concerns do not need official corrective action, but we highly recommend proactively addressing it. You can choose to utilize your grant manager as a support in addressing it if you would like. If, however, there is something that is not in compliance and puts your funding at risk, it will be listed as a finding. You will have 30 days from the final report to correct it, and this is called the curing process. It gives you the opportunity to address it before a corrective action plan is needed. If you're unable to correct it within 30 days, or you would like support from your grant manager in correcting it, your grant manager and your agency's relevant staff will create a corrective action plan that outlines steps to be taken and support needed in order to do so. This is a formal process for agencies to receive technical assistance from the Department of Housing to ensure ESG compliance and enhance program performance.
In addition to reviewing the monitoring process, we also wanted to provide some helpful tips and tools to help you prepare for your monitoring visit. A few things we'd like to go over include creating a core documents file at your agency where you collect documents of your policies and procedures and clearly label them. Subrecipients are encouraged to create a core documents grant file, and this will include a copy of your grant application, your executed grant contract, and the budget, any ESG correspondence you receive from your grant manager about your funded activities, your monthly financial reimbursement submissions and your backup documentation, and your funded activities policies and procedures manual. You may also want to include your quarterly report capers that you submit in Neighborly. If you know that we'll be preparing a site visit, be sure to have a tour and meeting space prepared. We will go over the client access to your services as well as the on-site habitability and access requirements. Also be available for an entrance and exit conference with your ESG grant manager. The entrance conference is to ask and answer any questions you may have about the monitoring process. And following the grant manager review of your monitoring documents, you may also have an exit conference to address any questions or curing that may need to take place. And finally, be sure to respond to the corrective actions in the allotted time frame. A couple other helpful tips as you're preparing your files. As we already said, just be sure that you have consistent organization by labeling your digital files in your core documents, as well as be sure that they are searchable, because this really saves time and helps us in the review process. And to highlight a few helpful tools and resources for you as you prepare for your monitoring. During the monitoring process, when you are notified you will be monitored, you will be provided with a link to our Emergency Solutions Grant Compliance and Monitoring Shared Drive folder. And in this folder are many helpful tools for you as you prepare for monitoring, including our monitoring guide, a monitoring 101 document, all the communications regarding monitoring, copies of the onboarding slideshow you see now, and other monitoring documents lists. So be sure to check out the Drive file because it will have most resources you need for your monitoring. I wanted to bring specific attention to our Division of Housing monitoring tool, which will be very helpful for you to look at. It includes the official ESG monitoring compliance checklists that we are required to complete for example, for financial management and administrative management, record keeping, and then for each Emergency Solutions Grant funded activity, for example, rapid rehousing or street outreach or shelter. This monitoring tool is what we are required to document in our monitoring process. So be sure to have a look at that. Also look at your Neighborly records where you've been submitting your program reimbursement requests and quarterly reports. Review those records. In addition, we review your application and your submitted compliance forms, because in the application process, there are many we address many monitoring compliance issues in the application. For example, your ability to comply with HMIS requirements, to comply with your local community's consolidated plan, and other forms you submit in the application. Finally, a couple other helpful tips that are online and widely available to you. The ESG regulations for program components and eligible activities is a hyperlink to a very helpful resource provided by Cornell Law School. It is a hyperlink of all of the ESG program components and eligible activities that link specifically to the program regulations and detail the specific code and regulations for each of the activities we'll be looking at in your monitoring. So it's a really helpful reference for you as you go through and prepare for monitoring. And finally, the official HUD monitoring handbook is also linked here. Chapter 28 covers ESG, but it's essentially the federal regulations where we draw our monitoring process and procedures from. But if you want to look at that, it is also available to you online with HUD. So thank you very much for viewing this presentation in preparation for your monitoring. And if you have any further questions, be sure to check the resources mentioned in this slide presentation and also reach out to your grant manager. Thank you.